In this series of videos, we're going to focus in on oral reading fluency. In this first video, we're going to focus on defining oral reading fluency. And then in the videos that will follow, we'll look at assessing it and then teaching it. If you have questions about fluency or this video in particular, please direct your questions to Dr. Morgan Blanton. And all of these videos were created for you by the faculty of the Literacy Education program here at Appalachian State University. So first, we're going to focus in on defining oral reading fluency. Here's a definition that helps us understand what oral reading fluency is. And I like this definition because it has some really great adjectives that describe the three main components of oral reading fluency. This definition says that fluency may be defined as reasonably accurate reading at an appropriate rate with suitable expression that leads to accurate and deep comprehension and motivation to read. And this is a definition by Hasbrook and Glasser, and I like it because of this focus on the adjectives reasonably, appropriate, and suitable, as well as the reminder that this definition gives us that the focus of reading is not simply reading quickly or with the best expression. The purpose of improving someone's oral reading fluency is so that they can understand what they're reading more, and so that they will be more motivated to read. So I like that about this definition. I also like that it reminds us that the accuracy, it needs to be reasonably accurate. So it doesn't have to be 100%, but it does need to be reasonably accurate. We'll talk more about each one of these in the next slides. It also reminds us that the rate needs to be appropriate, that it doesn't need to be so fast that we feel like we're in a race, or so slow that we have a hard time remembering what we read because it took us so long to do it. And then also it says suitable expression. And I like that adjective because it's not over the top expression, but it's suitable for whatever the text is about. So these are the main components of oral reading fluency. Often you'll see these three components listed out: accuracy, automaticity, and then prosody. And we're going to talk about each one of these in the slides that follow. So what is accuracy? Accuracy is the ability to recognize and decode words correctly. So how accurately someone reads a text. It does affect comprehension. So if you look at these two examples, it gives you a really good example of how, if I misread a word, how it really does change the meaning. So this first one says, the boy contemplated swimming in shark-infested waters. So what does that mean? He thought about it, contemplated, he thought about it. It doesn't say that he did it, it said that he thought about it, which is very different from the next sentence here. The boy continued swimming in shark-infested waters. Now that's scary. The word continued means that he was doing it and he kept doing it. So if I were to misread continued for contemplated or contemplated for continued, that completely changes the meaning. And so that's why accuracy is so important for reading comprehension, and it's a very important part of oral reading fluency. So what is automaticity? Automaticity is the ability to recognize and decode words correctly and quickly. So automaticity affects comprehension. You might hear this term about reducing the cognitive load. Reducing the cognitive load simply means that you are doing it effortlessly, so your brain doesn't really have to focus really hard on it because it's an effortless process. And so because of that, your brain can focus on something else. So if you have effortless decoding, you do it with automaticity, you do it quickly and correctly, then your brain is going to have more capacity for sense making. So your brain is going to be able to focus more on making sense of the words and less on figuring out what the words actually are. And then prosody, the ability to read with conversation-like expression. And then prosody affects comprehension, but it's also one of those neat things where comprehension affects prosody. So prosody is the ability to read with good expression, with appropriate pacing, with your intonation being appropriate. And so here I've got just a few reminders that reading with appropriate expression and phrasing helps the reader comprehend the text. And later we'll look at a few examples of that. Prosody indicates comprehension, but it does not guarantee it. And so don't be fooled. There may be a student who has become proficient at reading with expression and with correct phrasing. Maybe the student is proficient at paying attention to punctuation, but that does not mean that they automatically understand everything they read. Sometimes students sound like they are really fluent readers, but then there's some other things that they might need to work on comprehension-wise. But it is an indicator of comprehension. So oftentimes it does indicate comprehension, but I do just want to remind you that it's not guarantee it.